everybody. Welcome to the second episode of I Feel the Podcast. I'm your friend Sachi Chug, and I'm here with my partner,
Tisha King.
Tisha King.
So we're both neuroscience. We have neuroscience backgrounds, and we're here to add a scientific spin to everyday topics.
So in our last episode, you might have heard, our last episode was about gossip and why everybody loves to gossip. If you haven't heard it already, please go back to the first episode and listen to it.
Definitely.
Because our next episode, today's episode, is basically an extension, and we try and pull in things from our last episode so we can continue discussing things in our next episode. So in the last episode, there was one particular quote that stood out. And that quote basically was that you only gossip about people or something or someone when you are misaligned with something or someone, or you're just misaligned with that energy.
Exactly. So today we want to talk about misalignment. We're going to go through the definition, kind of what it means to us, the types of misalignment, and how it impacts the brain.
Yeah, so I think before we dive into what misalignment is and the scientific and the psychological definition of it, I really want to ask you, Tisha, what does misalignment mean to you personally?
So for me, the first thing that comes to mind, especially because we both have an academic background, would be imposter syndrome. So that's kind of when the person that you present yourself or how people look at you is not how you feel on the inside.
Right.
And that kind of leaves you feeling like uneasy and offsetting, and can lead to, you kind of feeling down or depressed about everything because you feel like you aren't in alignment with what you are exuding yourself to be.
Yeah, but it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I think when you're trying to be or get to some place and you're trying to be somebody or portraying that persona, so to speak.
Right.
This quote that comes to my mind, which is fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
Right? So I think when we are maybe at the moment misaligned with what we're doing, but hold on, I think there's also alignment in some way that maybe right, but we're still talking about we're moving according to our beliefs to get where we want to get.
Right.
Right? So maybe in that moment right now we feel like, oh, that's where I want to be. I'm not there yet. So I kind of feel misaligned, but eventually I am making progress towards being more aligned.
Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily have to be bad, like with the imposter syndrome. It can also be kind of good where you're manifesting something into your life because you know what you want and where you're trying to go, and you just speaking it into existence, which we just found out definitely works 100%.
It absolutely does. It does. Absolutely does.
So I guess we can move a little into the definition of how misalignment is defined. And so it involves not feeling in tune with life or disconnect from the natural flow of how you envision yourself and what you actually are. And this can impact several aspects of our lives.
Right. I think talking about, the different aspects that whenever you have a belief system, you believe in something, you feel something, but your actions are not completely aligned with your beliefs, of course, it affects so many different aspects of our lives. Of course, I think the biggest that I can think of my mind is relationships. You feel something about your friend, or if you're in a relationship with somebody, but you're not acting that way, and you're not telling what your needs are, how you feel being in that relationship, is definitely, I feel, misalignment. And of course we see misalignment in workplace as well, and I feel like misalignment causes a lot of stress. It causes, and it affects like our mental being, our mental health, our physical health as well. That's why we have anxiety, we have depression, we have all of these things when we are not completely aligned with who we are supposed to be.
Exactly. So you kind of cover some of the types of how misalignment can manifest in our lives, professionally, at work, if what you're doing doesn't truly benefit you as a person, or correspond with what your belief system is. And then we have the personal, with our relationships being romantic, friendships, platonic relationships, things like that. But the one that we kind of want to focus on the most today is misalignment within yourself. So the belief systems that you have don't correspond to the behaviors that you're performing.
Right, right.
Do you think there are any physical indicators of misalignment?
Well, I think we've covered a little bit on like what the basic indicators could be for a lot of us. That's, when you're not calm, when you're super anxious about something, and even when you feel depressed. So these definitely are indicators that something's off.
Right.
But I think for me personally, this indicator that I go off of is resistance. Is whenever I feel I am so resistant towards something that feeling, that doesn't seem right. Doesn't feel
unsettling.
Right. It's just unsettling because I think sometimes what happens is you can't like put it in a box that, oh, it's anxiety, oh, it's sadness, oh, it's depression. Like you can't give a name to it, but the feeling that you feel for me is that resistance.
Yeah, and I think too it's really important to have the awareness of that, to be aware like that something is off is kind of like the first step to making the changes that you need to become more aligned, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we kind of talked about, or you mentioned like depression and being stressed and anxiety, which we know stems from the brain. So what are some of like the brain regions that could be impacted when we feel misaligned?
Yeah, so when we're talking about, misalignment as such, we have seen that, okay, so here's our belief system and here's our actions, right? So do they align together? And obviously a lot of that is making decisions. What do you do in a situation, right? And we know that there are so many different brain regions that come together for us to make the decisions that we make. For example, we have the prefrontal cortex, we have the amygdala, we have the hippocampus. All of these regions are coming together to make that decision. And I know like it all sounds super complex, so Tisha is going to do a better job than I just did on explaining it in a better way.
Yeah, it can be a little, and just thinking about the brain overall can be a little intimidating.
Very
because there's
intimidating.
so many parts, so many neurotransmitters and hormones and things that are playing so many roles to make us produce these behaviors that we do. So kind of a simple example of how misalignment within your life can manifest into physiological misalignment between different biological systems. So say if for whatever reason there's a week where you're not getting a lot of sleep, like you're pretty stressed out and you just can't get enough sleep that you usually would during that week. If we aren't sleeping as much, then we may have higher cortisol levels, which is the major stress hormone. And if our cortisol levels are really high, this can impact serotonin levels within our brain. And serotonin is one of the happy hormones that make us, feel good about ourselves and ready to take on the day and everything. So one system or mechanism that kind of works with people who have anxiety or depression, and what some of the medications target are these serotonin reuptake receptors or receptors. And so how they work is when serotonin is released from one cell, it can either go on to in the body to have other actions that will lead us to be happy, or it can just get kind of sucked back up by that same cell, and there's a cycle that continues. So these medications are inhibiting that reuptake process and allowing more serotonin to be available within the brain so that it can just go and make us feel pretty good about ourselves in the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, because I've always wondered on how, the depression medication basically worked. And it makes more sense. So it's basically that there's a cell which is making all this serotonin, which is the happy hormone. And the depression medication is basically telling the cell, oh, don't please take up all the serotonin you're making.
Exactly.
But please give it to all the other parts of the body so I can feel
exactly
good again.
Yeah, so we have misalignment within our lives, our behaviors and our beliefs, and then we have misalignment within our body and these different biological systems that we need to maintain in order to allow us to feel aligned throughout our lives.
Yeah, because like even if there's one neurotransmitter or hormone which is off in the system, it just throws off all the other systems.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot of regulation that our body is doing to be kind of, make us just feel good and normal.
Exactly.
And aligned with, I think, how we are naturally supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely need to maintain like homeostasis, or just a basis of who we are as a person, and that is really important in order to have alignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we kind of talked about misalignment, what it is, how it can lead to stress, depression, anxiety, all these things, and overall just being aware that we're misaligned in our lives. But we do also want to talk about how we can overcome this and become more aligned. So now that we have the awareness, how do we change it? What actions do we take? What steps do we take to make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel first step is being aware that, okay, that's my belief system and I'm not probably acting toward according to my belief system. And we've mentioned that it comes up in our day-to-day life a lot. It comes up in terms of our relationships. It comes up in terms of our workplace. And even it comes up when, we are alone. And I don't use the word alone or lonely as much, but I'd rather use the word solitude. Nice. And that's that's the word I've taken from Jay Shetty. When you're in solitude, when you're just with oneself, with myself, like, what am I doing with my free time?
Right.
Is everything that I'm doing in my free time aligned with what I believe in? If I kind of believe in like being productive, if I believe in being physically healthy, am I taking those beliefs into action? Am I working out enough? Because my belief is, one should be physically healthy.
Right.
So, just like aligning ourselves with what we feel and what we believe in, and also taking action according to that, especially in solitude, is something which is like to explore about and think about in our day-to-day life. So I think it'll be great now that we have the awareness of what is actually misalignment. It'll be great to explore in our very next episode on what are the steps that we need to take to be more aligned.
Definitely. And we're going to do all the work for you, so you don't have to go out and figure it out yourselves. And the next episode, we're going to definitely dive more into which steps to become the person that we want to be. Yeah.
And when we're talking about the steps, what are the things that we can do? This beautiful concept in this book that I've read about, it's called Ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept which basically takes 4 pillars together, and it talks about, so what is it that I love? Okay? And then it also talks about like, am I working according to what I love? Then it's like, okay, so that's my beliefs, and am I working according to that? And then I also have to see, wait, so what does the world actually need? When I go out in the world, am I being the person that I want to become? And I'm also catering to the world on what it actually needs, and also, eventually making money off of,
right,
whatever I'm doing. And it of course, Ikigai is, it's talking about your personal alignment. It talks about your professional alignment. So if you guys want to go out and just check this book out, it's called Ikigai. It's a beautiful book to know more about how to be more aligned. And of course, we will be explaining and giving you the tips and tricks on our next episode on how to be more aligned. But definitely, if you want to go check out the book, it's a great resource.
Yeah, definitely. And also leave us some comments about how a misalignment manifests in your life and what you do when you feel misaligned, or how do you recognize it within yourself?
Yeah, just share all the stories that you have. Please give us any questions that you have when we're talking about these different topics, because we ourselves are exploring all these topics, and it's just such a great way to be engaging with everybody and getting to know like how you feel about misalignment. So please give us everything in the comment section, however you feel. That's why we have I feel.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely use the hashtag I feel. Yeah. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at IFeel_podcast. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.
All right, guys. Bye for now.